The vast Pacific Ocean, a canvas of blue stretching to the horizon, held secrets and simmering tensions in the early days of December 1941. On the eastern edge of this immense expanse lay the Hawaiian Islands, a paradise cloaked in the scent of plumeria and the murmur of gentle trade winds. But beneath this idyllic surface, the United States, and specifically its vital naval base at Pearl Harbor, was a nation on edge. The world was embroiled in a brutal conflict, and the shadow of war loomed, an unseen yet palpable threat. While the eyes of the world were fixed on the geopolitical chessboard and the looming confrontation with the Empire of Japan, fate, in its peculiar way, was about to orchestrate a bizarre and almost unbelievable drama on a tiny, isolated island, an island that time seemed to have forgotten. This is the story of the Niihau Incident. To truly understand the Niihau Incident, we must first understand Niihau itself. It is the westernmost of the main Hawaiian Islands, a crescent of land approximately 18.5 miles long and 6.5 miles wide, with a population rarely exceeding 200 people. Unlike its more populated neighbors, Niihau remained largely untouched by the burgeoning tourism and agricultural development that characterized other Hawaiian islands. Its nickname, the Forbidden Isle, was not mere hyperbole. In 1941, it was owned by the Robinson family, descendants of a Scottish nobleman who had acquired the island in the 1860s. Under their stewardship, Niihau was managed as a private ranch, a world apart from the bustling mainland. Access was strictly controlled, with visitors typically requiring permission. Life on Niihau was a unique blend of traditional Hawaiian culture and the realities of ranching life. Many of the residents were native Hawaiians, preserving their language and customs in a way that was increasingly rare elsewhere in the archipelago. Sheep and cattle roamed the sparse, arid landscape. The island's remoteness, its small population, and its unique ownership created an environment where events could unfold with a peculiar, almost surreal quality. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific, in the heart of an ambitious and increasingly militaristic Japan, a momentous decision was being made. For years, Japan had been pursuing an expansionist agenda, seeking to establish dominance in East Asia and the Pacific. The United States, with its powerful navy and its growing influence, stood as the primary obstacle to Japan's grand ambitions. Diplomatic efforts had failed, and the two nations were locked in a tense standoff. On December 7, 1941, as the world held its breath, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. This audacious strike, a devastating blow to the U.S. Pacific Fleet, plunged America into World War II. Amidst the chaos and destruction of the Pearl Harbor attack, a small contingent of Japanese aircraft, their mission complete, turned their attention to the long flight back to their carriers. One of these aircraft, a Mitsubishi A6M-0 fighter bearing the markings of the Imperial Japanese Navy, was piloted by Petty Officer First Class Shigenori Nishikaichi. Another aircraft, a Nakajima B-5N bomber, crewed by Warrant Officer Takeo Izumi and Sergeant Kazuo Tomihiro, was also part of the returning wave. The journey back was not without its peril. Weather conditions could be unpredictable, and navigation over the endless ocean was a challenge. For Nishikaichi Zero, a mechanical issue, perhaps a fuel leak or engine trouble, forced him to deviate from his planned course. As fuel ran low, he knew he couldn't make it back to his carrier. His only option was to attempt an emergency landing. His target, the nearest landmass. The island of Niihau, a mere speck on the radar of most people, became Nishikaichi's unexpected destination. He spotted the island and, with dwindling fuel, managed to bring his fighter down on a relatively flat grassy area near the village of Puwai. The landing was rough, damaging the Zero. Nishikaichi emerged, shaken but alive. He was, however, in a precarious position. He had no idea where he was, only that he was on unfamiliar territory, far from his home and his fleet. The appearance of a foreign aircraft, particularly one bearing the insignia of a nation with which Japan was now openly at war, was a cause for immediate alarm on Niihau. The island's residents, isolated as they were not entirely unaware of the global conflict. Word of the Pearl Harbor attack had, in fact, reached Niihau via radio broadcasts. The sight of Saizaki's Zero, therefore, was not met with complete bewilderment, but with a grim understanding of its significance. As Saizaki attempted to secure his damaged aircraft, he was approached by a group of Niihau residents. Among them was Haruo Arashiro, a Japanese American who had moved to Niihau from the Big Island some years prior. Arashiro, it turned out, had a crucial and ultimately tragic role to play. He had learned Japanese, and when he encountered Saizaki, he was able to communicate with the downed pilot. Saizaki, through Arashiro, explained his predicament. He was a pilot from the Japanese Navy, shot down during an attack on Pearl Harbor. He was alone, injured, and seeking assistance. What happened next is the stuff of legend and historical debate. While some accounts suggest Saizaki was initially treated with suspicion, the isolated nature of Niihau and the cultural norms of the time likely played a role in the initial response. The Robinsons, though the owners, were absent from the island at the time of the incident, having travelled to Honolulu. This left the residents to manage the situation themselves. Haruo Arashiro, seemingly acting as an interpreter and intermediary, conveyed Saizaki's story. Meanwhile, the other Japanese aircraft, the bomber crewed by Izumi and Tomohiro, had also encountered trouble. Their bomber, having participated in the Pearl Harbor raid, suffered damage. Instead of attempting a landing on Niihau, they were forced to ditch their aircraft in the ocean a few miles offshore. Saizaki, unaware of their fate, was now effectively alone on the island. The story takes a dramatic turn with the arrival of another figure, Eddie Ishikawa. Ishikawa was a Japanese-American resident of Niihau who, like Arashiro, had learned Japanese. He was also known to be a man of some influence on the island. When Ishikawa learned of Saizaki's presence, he came to Puwai. The exact circumstances of their meeting and subsequent actions are clouded by conflicting accounts. However, it is clear that Ishikawa, along with Arashiro, began to actively assist Saizaki. The true extent of their intentions and motivations remains a subject of historical speculation. Some theories suggest that Ishikawa and Arashiro were acting under duress, perhaps believing Saizaki was a scout for a larger invasion force. Others posit that they were actively collaborating with Saizaki, believing in the Japanese cause or seeing an opportunity to exert influence. Regardless of their individual motivations, their actions shifted the incident from a simple downed pilot scenario to a much more complex and dangerous situation. Their primary objective, it appears, became to disarm the local Hawaiian population and confiscate any firearms. They believed this would be a crucial step in preparing for a potential Japanese occupation, or at least in neutralizing any resistance. Ishikawa, leveraging his standing and his knowledge of Japanese, began to assert his authority. He informed the residents that Japan had won the war and that they should surrender their weapons. The idea was to prevent any armed opposition should further Japanese forces arrive. The residents of Niihau, particularly the native Hawaiians, were deeply loyal to the Robinson family and the United States. While they were surprised and perhaps intimidated by the presence of Saizaki and the subsequent actions of Ishikawa and Arashiro, many were reluctant to fully comply. A tense standoff began to develop. Saizaki, the downed pilot, was now in a situation where he was being aided by two local Japanese Americans who were actively trying to disarm the island's inhabitants. The absence of the Robinsons, the island's legal owners and authorities, was a critical factor. Without their immediate presence, the residents lacked a clear figure of authority to appeal to or rely on for guidance. This power vacuum allowed Ishikawa and Arashiro to exert their influence more effectively. Meanwhile, the US military, aware of the Pearl Harbor attack, was in a state of high alert. The disappearance of the bomber crew and the damage zero had not gone unnoticed. The military was actively searching for any signs of enemy presence or activity in the Hawaiian Islands. The story of Saizaki's landing had, however, reached the mainland through a rather unusual channel. A Niihau resident, Lena Kalau, had managed to get a message to the mainland authorities. She had obtained a piece of paper from Saizaki's wrecked aircraft, possibly a logbook fragment or a map. On it, she scrawled a message indicating the presence of a Japanese pilot on Niihau and the alarming actions of Ishikawa and Arashiro. This message, passed through the hands of various individuals, eventually found its way to the US Navy intelligence. The fragmented information painted a picture of a potentially dangerous situation unfolding on the isolated island. The US Navy, receiving this intelligence, dispatched a naval vessel to investigate. Their arrival on Niihau was a pivotal moment. As the Navy patrol aircraft approached the island, they spotted the damaged Zero, confirming the presence of enemy aircraft. This visual confirmation immediately elevated the situation to a high-priority military concern. The initial response from the military was cautious. They wanted to assess the situation and apprehend the individuals involved without causing further harm to the island's residents. A landing party was dispatched from the naval vessel. Their objective was to secure the downed pilot and apprehend Ishikawa and Arashiro. Upon landing, the naval personnel encountered the residents of Niihau. The situation was still fraught with tension. Ishikawa and Arashiro had managed to confiscate a number of firearms from the local population, including a shotgun and a pistol. They held these weapons, believing they were acting on behalf of the Japanese Empire. The naval party quickly located Saizaki, who surrendered without resistance. The real confrontation, however, was with Ishikawa and Arashiro. When confronted by the US Navy personnel, Ishikawa, still believing in his mission, resisted. He brandished the shotgun he had acquired. In the ensuing confrontation, a tragic escalation occurred. Petty Officer First Class Edward F. Wilson, a US Navy sailor, was killed when Ishikawa fired the shotgun at him. The situation then devolved into further chaos. Arashiro, seeing the violence unfold, also became involved. In the ensuing struggle, Saizaki, the downed Japanese pilot, was killed. It is believed he was killed by either Ishikawa or Arashiro, perhaps in a moment of panic or desperation. The exact sequence of events leading to Saizaki's death is still debated, but he was certainly a victim of the escalating violence. The US Navy personnel quickly regained control of the situation. Ishikawa and Arashiro were apprehended. The remaining firearms were secured. The immediate threat on Niihau was neutralized, but the island was left in a state of shock and grief. The aftermath of the Niihau incident was significant. For the residents of Niihau, it was a deeply traumatic experience. They had witnessed violence and death on their peaceful island, and their trust had been shaken. The isolation that had once been a hallmark of Niihau now felt like a vulnerability. The Robinsons, upon returning, were instrumental in helping their community recover. They ensured that the residents were cared for and that the island's unique way of life could, in time, begin to heal. For the US military, the Niihau incident served as a stark reminder of the realities of total war. While the main focus was on the large-scale battles and strategic maneuvers, the possibility of isolated enemy actions and the complexities of dealing with enemy aliens on the home front became apparent. The incident highlighted the importance of effective intelligence gathering and the need for swift, decisive action in securing potential threats. Haruo Arashiro and Eddie Ishikawa faced the consequences of their actions. They were charged with murder and conspiracy. Both were found guilty and received life sentences for their roles in the deaths of Petty Officer Wilson and Petty Officer Saizaki. They served time in federal prison, their names forever etched in the annals of this peculiar wartime episode. The Niihau Incident, though a small footnote in the grand narrative of World War II, offers profound insights. It underscores the human element in warfare, the complex interplay of loyalty, fear, and ideology. It shows how even in the most remote corners of the world, the distant roar of conflict could reach and disrupt peaceful lives. It demonstrates the fragility of peace and the devastating consequences when that peace is shattered by the harsh realities of war. The story of Niihau is a testament to the unpredictable nature of conflict, where a single downed aircraft and the actions of a few individuals could lead to a tragic and unforgettable incident, forever changing the lives of those who called this Forbidden Isle home. The quiet isolation of Niihau was, for a brief and terrifying period, shattered by the echoes of a world at war. Thanks for watching. Show your support for US war veterans by liking and subscribing.